Hey, this is Ben, and I'm going to complete day 15 of Wes Boss's JavaScript 30. And there's a lot to cover today, but the two main topics are going to be event delegation and local storage. So when I type items into this local tapas menu, like pollo and let's say bistec, you'll see that I have local storage pulled up here in my DevTools. If you open DevTools, go to Application, and then look for your local storage on the left here, all of those values that I've added are being saved in local storage. Well, what does that do? So if I leave this page or if I refresh this page, the JavaScript is going to look inside local storage, and then it knows to create DOM elements based off of what it sees in here. If I clear the local storage and go over to my starter file, I can still type things in, so we can still add different tapas if I wanted to. But if I traveled away from this page and came back, or if I restarted, those tapas are going to disappear. Now, one more thing I want to point out is this check function here. That's going to be something that we handle with event delegation. And again, if I refresh this page, it's going to remember if I've checked or not on either one of these items. So let's get rocking here. There's a lot to cover today, so I'm only actually going to write this third and final function, and that's what's going to cover event delegation, and that's what's going to save whether or not an item has been checked. So the first thing I had to do was grab the elements from the DOM, add to those elements the event listeners, and then I'm also going to create this variable here, and it's got some weird things going on. The first thing is going to be this empty array all the way at the end, and that is what will be read the first time this JavaScript is loaded. So at the very bottom, I have this populate list, which refers to this function right here. And the first time that this page is read, it's going to take an empty array, items, and then nothing will get added to the DOM. But before that empty array, there is this json.parse local storage get item. Local storage only holds values as strings. So using this method json.parse is going to convert that string into an object, or rather an array full of objects, and then I can look into that array and add elements to the DOM. So those are the DOM elements, that's the items array and the event listeners. Let's get looking at the functions. The first is this add item, and this is how we're going to take input from the user and then save it into this items array. Event default will stop the window from reloading after you submit the form. We're going to grab the text from the input, create this item object, and provide that object with the text from the input field. We're going to push that object into the array, and finally with that array we're going to invoke populate list. Now populate list is going to take two arguments. It's going to take the array, in this case that array of items, and it's going to take a list to which we're going to append to all of these list items. So with that list, we're going to, let me back up a little bit. The inner HTML of that list is going to be the result of mapping over the array, and that array again is the list of items. And the big thing that I want to point out here is this data index. I've covered this in a couple of videos before, but this is a way of making a custom attribute by typing in the word data dash and then following it with whatever you want. This data index, or specifically this value, is what's going to it's going to come in handy when we do event delegation, and it's how I'm going to determine which element on the DOM actually triggered the event. So with that being said, let's do some event delegation here. Oh, I forgot a big step here. We're totally skipping the local storage part. So like I showed you in the demonstration, we have enough of the JavaScript set up where I can actually add items to the tapas list, but if I refresh the page, all of that information disappears. So let's actually add those tapas to local storage so that data persists. So we're going to call local storage, and then we're going to say set item, and we'll say items. This is simply a label to provide for this particular bit of data, and then we're going to use json.stringify, because again, all information in local storage is stored as a string. So if I gave it an object without json.stringify and you look in your local storage, you're literally going to see the words object written in there, and that's not what you want. So let's make sure that I can actually save things in local storage. First, let's clear. I'll refresh. So if I wanted to add pollo and bistec, let's open up the DevTools, application, local storage, and you can see I've got pollo and bistec hidden in local storage. If I refresh the page, did it refresh? Yes, it did. Now we have pollo and bistec. But now that I've checked those things and I refresh, they're not checked anymore. So let's fix that. What's happening in toggle done? The first thing I need to do is end the function if the element which triggered the event isn't the input tag. Now, why might that be? Well, event delegation is handing an event to a parent element and then running a function on one of the children of that parent element. So what that means is I've actually added the event trigger to the form tag, but I don't want the form tag itself to actually run the function that I need it to run. Instead, I'm going to hand it down to one of the child elements. But the form tag doesn't just have inputs, it has various different child elements. So this first thing is going to make sure I only target the input tags within the form tag. So what do I need to do? So I need to say if e.target.matches inputs, and just go ahead and return. So now that we know after that step that we have in fact that the input tag, of the form tag is the element that triggered the event, we're going to go ahead and save that element to a variable. So we'll say const elements is equal to e.target, and now we're going to access that data-index to figure out which element of the form actually triggered the event. So we'll say const index is equal to elements dot datasets dot index, and that'll get us the element that actually triggered the event. And now we're going to switch back and forth between checked or not checked, and we do that as so. So we'll say items, that's the list of tapas, at whatever index of the element that triggered the event is done, or flip it if it's not done. Index dot done. So all that line basically means is if that tag has already been checked, then switch it to not checked. If that element does not have checked, then switch it to checked. And now we're going to save that to local storage, and it's actually the same bit of information that we're going to do here. So I'll just copy and paste. So now that information is saved in local storage. And then finally we need to add that list of items back to the DOM, which we can do by invoking populate list and provide it with the items array and the item list unordered list. Cool. Well, barring any errors, this should be up and running. Let's go ahead and clear out local storage. So I'll flip this. We'll say pollo and bistec. Let's go ahead and check a couple of these. We'll refresh and they're still checked. We'll uncheck one, refresh, it's still unchecked. So that's today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you tomorrow.